Hello and welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, Gayatri, and today we move into episode 4 When Presence Slips in our season 3 of Catalyze Your Self. In this episode, we turn our attention to something that is subtle, yet so deeply impactful. What happens when presence of mind begins to slip? Presence of mind is something that we can take for granted. We can often assume it is a constant. We assume that because we are functioning, we are living our lives, because we are responding, we are meeting our responsibilities. Yet, presence can narrow without us even immediately noticing. And when it does, it has a tremendous impact on how we navigate life. Presence of mind, as we have explored in previous seasons, is the internal collaboration between our cognition, our emotions, and our layers of consciousness and our nervous system in real time. When that collaboration is accessible, we feel grounded. We respond from alignment. Our expression reflects who we intend to be. And when that collaboration becomes less accessible, something shifts. We may be effective, we may be capable, we may be performing well. Internally, we are not anchored. And that is what we are exploring today through the lens of sustained internal or external pressure. In this episode, we will take a holistic look at what slipping of presence of mind can actually look like, how it shows up internally, how it shapes our relationships, and how we recognizing it sooner can return us to a more aligned state more quickly. And for that, let us begin with a personal experience. There was a period in my life when I reported to a leader who had a tendency to diminish my work contributions. It was not overt, not all the time. It was subtle most of the times. A reframing here, a slight redirection of credit here and there. Over time, I learned how to remain steady in those moments. I understood the pattern. I stayed focused on my work. I did not allow it to destabilize me. Then, during an especially intense project, when the pressure was already elevated, the same behavior surfaced again. In that moment, something shifted in me internally. I could feel the frustration rise. I could feel the agitation building beneath my composed exterior. My body was tightening before my thinking had fully caught up. Outwardly, I remained measured, but internally, there was a storm brewing. I was no longer fully grounded. And this is how presence begins to slip. This is not because I lacked awareness. It is not because I did not know my value. This happened as a result of being in conditions of sustained pressure, which had narrowed my internal space to process, rest, and recuperate. Mid-conversation, I caught it. I noticed it. I noticed that my response was beginning to express from frustration rather than alignment within. I recognized that if I spoke from that state, my expression would not reflect who I intended to be. So I recalibrated internally. I reminded myself that this behavior was rooted in the leader's insecurity and not in my contribution. I grounded myself in what I knew to be true about my work and my intent. And from that place, I was able to respond steadily. My external situation did not change, but my presence did. It slipped under pressure, and I returned when I intentionally regrounded myself. What I described in that relational example is one version of presence slipping, but it does not always look like agitation rising in a visible interaction. It can show up in so many different ways. One of the earliest ways presence begins to slip is the way we stop fully tracking ourselves in real time. When we are operating with presence of mind, our sense of awareness is fully in tune with how the external world is being processed by our cognition, our emotion, and our consciousness. Our self is fully grounded in our values and how we express our intentions in response to the world, and it's regulated within this space. As our practice of self-reflection deepens, we can build our awareness to become our own observer in real time. When we are under pressure for an extended period of time, our presence of mind can slip and our awareness can lose track. We will find this shift to be so subtle that we may not even catch it when it's happening. We could still keep moving, still engaged with whatever it is that we are working on in the moment without being aware of it. And yet, something in how we move through the world has shifted. We may be in a conversation and answering a question, but we are not fully sensing our own tone as we answer. We may feel our body tighten, our shoulders rising, our jaw setting, our breath shortening, but we do not register it until after the moment has passed. We may respond quickly and only later realize that frustration had already been building beneath our composed exterior. We might think afterwards, I didn't realize I was that tense, or I didn't notice how irritated I was until I heard myself speak. When pressure has been sustained, the internal space that allows us to observe ourselves as we move can become smaller, and the world starts leading how we move through it versus ourself determining how we move through the world. And another way slipping of presence of mind can show up is in what begins to guide our actions. When we are grounded in presence of mind, our decisions are shaped by our alignment. Our values inform our response. Our intentions shape our expressions. Even under pressure, we can feel that we are choosing who, what, and who reflects who we are. When presence begins to narrow, the driver shifts. We may still be doing the same work. We may be still meeting expectations. We may still be performing at a high level, but internally, the reason we're choosing something has changed. Instead of our actions reflecting our values, we start beginning to choose actions to reduce friction and pressure. Instead of speaking because it feels aligned, we speak because it closes out something that felt uncomfortable and pressure-filled. Instead of deciding from clarity, we can decide to move things forward so we can reach completion faster. The signs are subtle. The shift is subtle. From alignment to obligation, from intention to expectation, from inspiration to demand. And we may not notice it immediately, and in time internally, something starts to feel less authentic. We might sense that we are performing a role rather than being a role. We might realize later that our response was technically correct, but not fully reflective of what mattered to us. When we are under sustained pressure, our internal space that allows our values to lead in real time gets weaker. And when that space narrows or constricts, the world's demands can begin guiding how we move through the world than ourself. And that drift can continue quietly until we pause long enough to notice it. Another way of slipping of presence of mind can show up is in the quiet narrowing of our internal capacity. And what do I mean by this? You know the space that it takes for our presence of mind to ground in ourselves? That space that allows for all parts of our mind to collaborate and communicate with our nervous system, that space. When we are grounded and internally aligned, we have that space. Space to tolerate ambiguity, space to sit with complexity, space to hold emotion without being moved by it, space between what happens and how we respond. Under sustained pressure, that space begins to shrink. We may find that our tolerance is no longer what it once was. Ambiguity feels heavier. Small disruptions feel larger. Questions that require patience feel draining. Conversations that require nuance feel taxing. We may notice that we are more easily agitated, irritated, or that we are less willing to stay with something that does not resolve quickly. And to add to it all, our ability to recover and recharge now stays incomplete or takes much longer. An interaction that may have passed through us before now lingers. We replay it. We try to make sense of it. Fatigue can play a role here. When we are tired, our regulation requires more effort. The same emotional input requires more energy to process. The same level of demand now feels heavier. We may still be performing, but internally, it takes more effort to stay steady. And when effort replaces steadiness, presence of mind becomes harder to access. Another way of slipping of presence of mind can show up in how we relate to others while we are in interaction with them. When we are grounded in ourselves, there's something steady about how we communicate. We are not only aware of what we are saying, but we are also staying aware of how we are saying it. There's a coherence between our intention, our tone, and the timing of our response, even when the topic is uncomfortable, even when we are direct, even when pressure is present. We may not always choose perfect words. We can feel that we are expressing ourselves from a place that reflects who we are. When presence begins to narrow, that internal coherence can begin to loosen. It may not be obvious at first. We may still be speaking clearly. We may still be articulating our point. We may still be meeting the expectations of the moment, but something in how we are showing up now is shifted. We may find ourselves responding a little faster than usual, not because the situation itself demanded urgency, but because internally something feels tight and we just want to get over it. We may begin answering before fully sensing ourselves in the exchange. We may listen, but when we have already preparing what we are about to do next. There may come moments when our tone carries more weight than we intended, more intensity than we intended. A sentence lands with more force, a boundary is delivered with less steadiness than we normally value. The content may still be accurate, the words may still be appropriate, and yet the delivery feels slightly misaligned. And at other times, the shift is so much more quieter. We may speak less than what is true. We may keep our responses efficient and surface level. We may move the interaction forward because we wanted to just conclude, not because we are fully engaged in it. Later, sometimes much later, we might replay that interaction and sense that something about it did not feel fully representative of who we are. When we are grounded, we may realize that we were reacting more than responding, or that we were present in the exchange, but not fully present within ourselves while the exchange was happening. Presence slipping in expression does not have to be loud or dramatic. It does not always show up as conflict. Often it shows as subtle miscalibration, as conversation that moved forward but did not feel fully aligned, as words that made sense but did not carry the steadiness we know we are capable of. And while that miscalibration can feel small to us, relationships often register it. The person we are speaking with may not be able to articulate what shifted, but they can feel it. They may sense that something in our tone was different or did not sit the way well with them, that our listening was partial, that our response arrived before they were even finished being heard. Sometimes shows up as slight distance. The interaction is completed, but the connection does not deepen. The task is handled, but the relationship does not move, does not strengthen. Other times, it creates subtle friction. A comment is taken more personally than intended. A boundary feels sharper than it needed to be. A pause is interpreted as withdrawal. When presence slips in expression, what begins to erode is not productivity, it's attunement with our environment. We may continue collaborating, we may continue leading, we may continue supporting, but that felt sense of being seen and understood can diminish. Over time, repeated moments of slight miscalibration can change the quality of that connection. Conversations can become more transactional. Trust can become conditional. Engagement feels more functional than relational. And sometimes the most noticeable impact is internal. We may begin to feel less connected to the people we are interacting with, not because they've changed, but because our presence within that interaction has changed. Another way presence of mind slips is in the moments when we sense something is off and we choose to ignore that signal and continue anyway. These are the moments when we begin to realize our presence of mind is slipping or already has. There are moments when we know, we feel the need to recalibrate our response before we respond. We sense the tightening in our chest or the subtle irritation building in our tone. We recognize that we're not about to say something that fully reflects who we are when we are grounded. And in that moment, there is an opening to pause, an opening to breathe, an opening to recalibrate. But often, under sustained pressure, we just move through it without stopping. We can rationalize this push through in whatever way we want. We can tell ourselves it's minor. We tell ourselves we can address it later. We tell ourselves this is not the time to slow down. We can continue and deal with it later. And so we continue. We finish the sentence. We deliver the response. We move the interaction forward. Internally, we know we left something unexamined. We know we felt the shift. We know, even if it was briefly, that we were not aligned. Presence slipping does not always happen because we are unaware. Sometimes it happens because we override what we sensed, what we've just described experientially in all of these different ways is what it feels like when internal collaboration becomes less accessible in real time. Back in season 2, we introduced the SIRE model as a way to understand how our mind and nervous system can operate consciously and intentionally through self-awareness, self-inspiration, self-regulation, and self-expression, all of which operate in the ecosystem of self-reflection. The model also gave us our self-intervention behavioral practices of halt, rise, and shift that help us create that space and conditions to bring us back to alignment with ourself. When we are grounded in our presence of mind, is strongly focused on the current moment, all of those elements are working together optimally. Awareness tracks in real time. Inspiration is aligned with our values. Regulation is grounded. Expression is calibrated. Reflection integrates our experiences. And when early signals of misalignment rise, we pause, we reset, and we return intentionally. The SIRE model is one I created from my years of learning and understanding the human mind and patterns of behavior. If you need a refresher or feel curious to learn more, I invite you to check it out. Season 2. And I will also include a link of a free resource that you can get from my site that can provide you with an overview I'll put it in the description of this episode. And yes, you're also welcome to reach out to me. And now we have reached the closing of this episode. Let us take a moment to sit with everything we have explored today. We know this. Pressure is part of living and leading. And our presence of mind slipping can be subtle. It does not always announce itself through conflict or breakdown. More often, it just moves quietly through subtle shifts in awareness and motivation and regulation and expression. The question is not whether those shifts occur. The question is whether we are willing to notice them and do something about it when we do. Because the moment we recognize our presence of mind as weakened, even slightly, that moment is when we regain choice. Not the choice to undo what has already happened, the choice to return differently in the next moment. And that return does not require perfection. It simply asks for honesty. And before we move into our next conversation, I invite all of us to reflect on this. When our presence of mind slips, do we catch it today? Are there signals we notice and we just tend to move past it? Presence of mind strengthens through repetition. When we choose to come back to alignment every time, we recognize it has slipped for us. And feel free to reach out to me directly with any insights you want to share. Also share with our community so we can collectively resonate. And finally, please do feel free to share this content with anyone you know who might resonate and want to join this journey with us. We are strengthening our mind so we can navigate pressure in such a steadier manner. In our next episode, we will continue exploring how pressure influences our discernment and how we maintain clarity when urgency starts to shape our choices. Thank you for joining me today. I'm your host, Gayatri, and until next time, let us continue deepening our awareness. Let us remain attentive to the subtle shifts that's happening inside of us so we can move through our lives in alignment with ourself.